All right, everybody. Coming in live to episode 8 of Paint Bros.
Hey, hello everybody.
How's it going, Dan?
Not too bad. How you been?
How was your how was a weekend without conventions for you?
Uh, it was actually really nice.
Really? I forget.
You're the crazy one that decided to
I've,
take on what was it, back to back to back conventions to
I've
back to
almost
back,
I've almost forgotten what it's like to have a weekend
or a time zone, right?
or a time zone. Like the nice part about going west. So I was in Portland this past weekend. The nice part about going west is that one, I wake up really early, so I can actually fit in a morning run or at least a morning walk for a little bit on the first day before everything goes crazy.
Yeah,
Um, but going east and losing an hour uh, is always a little rough.
it's a little
Uh,
harrowing, right?
yeah, and then I get to stay in the same time zone this time. I get to go to Dallas. I'll be in Dallas this weekend, flying out tomorrow.
Nice. I've seen a few people that are going to be at that one, so
Yeah.
it should be a lot of fun, man. I It's on the list of things that cons that eventually I want to do, but maybe whenever the world's back to some semblance of normal. So we are drawing, for those that are curious, Dracula's.
Yes. Fun, Dracula.
Uh,
Today, what our topic's a little bit different. We're not going to really do anything watercolor related, correct?
right. This one is an all ink episode. Um, we with Arttober and Inktober trademarked, and
All those tobers.
yeah, all the Drawloween and
Yeah.
there's like 50 million of them. Uh, we thought it would be a good idea to do an episode that specifically kind of addressed working with ink, so that people could kind of get prepped on what it's like, and ways to create certain textures, and what would be better to draw something for an October thing than Dracula.
Then Dracula, indeed. We're gonna be um doing a black and white piece. Are we gonna hop into grayscale and ink washes at all? Is that we're gonna do a little of that too?
Uh, that's all you, man.
That's
I'm
all me.
probably gonna do. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe. I'm kind of keeping it open. I'm gonna kind of feel this piece out as I go. I already don't like what I just did, so I'm probably gonna erase everything. Um, well, it's one of those things where I'm trying to keep with the original Dracula,
Yeah,
Bela
yeah.
Lugosi, like the old school, but I hate. It's literally my least favorite of
It,
all the monsters. It's Universal monsters. It's the one that I dislike the most.
it's
Um,
such he's such a well behaved Dracula. He's like got the
exactly. He's too gentlemanly. It's like, come on,
yeah.
rip the
He's got
throat
the
out.
he's got like the tux and the vest and like the slick back hair.
Yeah, he just doesn't feel like Dracula to me.
Yeah, he
I
just looks
want an
like a pasty
undead.
guy.
I want Lestat. I want something like that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and capture the mood, I guess, if not him.
So you're taking on um, quite a quite a load of quite a challenge in October.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm focused on my image and was totally zoning.
No,
Um,
no. That's why there's two of us.
yes, I was indeed I'm taking on. So I'm gonna do two challenges instead of one. I always try and up the ante a little bit, and last year we did Arttober, and of course I got swamped with work. You got swamped with
Yeah,
work. I don't
yeah.
know if either of us really finished. I mean,
No, I
we
did
both
not.
just kind of.
I made it to 20. I think I made
I
it to
think that's
20.
about. I think that's about as far as I got before deadlines and everything else just
Yeah.
overwhelmed me. Um, so this year, I'm not doing any conventions. Um, I have some personal things to do, helping people out over here, but nothing that is pressing for October. Um, I do have some deadlines, but nothing that's nearly along the lines of um, what I had last year, which would
Hmm.
just it killed any sort of personal projects.
Oh yeah, 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 for sure, for sure.
So my thought this year is that I would be able to at least do one, and ink is a little easier for me. Um, the tougher thing is whenever I have to deal with color. It just there's more involved, as you know,
Hmm.
uh, and I think this year I'm going to do one challenge that's all ink, and then the other challenge is going to be full color pieces. But I'm not working as big as a lot of people do either. So my ink pieces will probably be something along these lines,
Hmm.
which is 8 by 8,
Hmm.
and then my um, color pieces are going to be the larger format. And I think what I'm going to do is, if I ever feel a little stressed about it, I'll go down to the smaller. If I feel like, I have an ink piece that I really want to do larger, I'll go up to the larger size. So they'll kind of flip flop on which size that I'll do, the 12 by 12 or the 8 by 8. Um, but yeah, as you'll see on this episode, because I will finish this here, I promise this time, um, ink is a little bit faster.
Yeah, because you don't have to worry about like temperature, color transitions, things like that. It's more,
It's high contrast.
it's
Yeah,
high
you're
contrast, it's value. You're focusing on
you
value.
can put value ranges in there, but for the most part, ink is you're dealing with black and white
Hmm.
um, at its core.
Hmm.
You're thinking, where's the light and where's the shadow that's cast from it.
Right.
Um, those are the two primary focuses whenever you do anything in pen and ink. You also have things like backlighting to consider, but these are all things that are secondary to the core, which is where's my light source, which are
Hmm.
things that you worry about in color too. But with color, you're thinking about, wow, how does that color mix with that? And
Hmm.
you have a lot more to worry about when color's involved,
Right.
which is why we typically charge more for those pieces.
Right. It's not just so that there's a difference between right. I kind of refer to it as like painting with watercolor versus like
Yeah,
coloring book watercolor, right? Where you have
no,
where
you're
you do
right.
where you do like a full ink and stuff like that, and then you literally take it like a coloring book and like, okay, this is blue, this is red, this is, you just do some really quick stuff versus
Yeah,
um, and both of those can look great. We have artist friends who do, you know, kind of
there are
tackle both
tons.
sides of that.
Yeah, comics in general are is ripe with people that just focus on black and white. Like
Yeah.
honestly, color is something that's completely alien to them because they don't ever have to deal with it. Um, and it's one of those things where they've spent their time honing their craft which is why comic creators, they're amazing
Hmm.
inkers. They know how
Hmm.
to use ink inside and out. Um,
Yeah.
there's an
That.
entire section of the industry that's only inkers.
Hmm.
Like that's all they do.
Yeah. I mean, like, come on, Scott Williams made a living, a great living off of just inks.
Yeah,
You know.
I mean,
Um,
look at the. Did he ink the one that's currently being auctioned right now? That's
yeah.
expected to fetch somewhere in the 1.5 million to 2 million range.
Yeah. Yeah. He did. That you're talking about the X-Men covers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
4 X-Men covers that are being auctioned by Jim Lee right now.
I'm surprised that he actually still has that. I did not realize that he still owned those.
It doesn't surprise me actually.
Yeah, I
There's
thought
certain
those were I
ones
thought those would have been sold years ago. It's some
long
collector.
gone. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
sold a lot of stuff,
I
but
know he
he
did.
kept a lot of things too.
Yeah,
There were a lot of things that like people are like, wait, that still exists? How is that
right,
possible?
right.
Yeah, that one in particular is. I mean, honestly, I'm kind of the mind with a lot of people where it's like that belongs in a museum. Um,
Yes, I agree.
I'm very Indiana Jones on this one.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
I
I think
think
a
when it
museum
has,
should
yeah,
bid on it and be like,
I think
yeah,
when it has
it's ours.
the cachet of being the most sold comic in the world, yeah,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
like let's do that. Um, but anyway, it's his thing. He can do whatever he wants with it.
Oh
He can
yeah.
buy whatever house he wants after he sells it.
He probably doesn't have to he probably already doesn't have to work a day in his life, but
He has multiple houses.
yeah.
I don't think it's really an issue at all. So, what is
And
your typical approach when you start inks for something?
so I came from a very before watercolor, I came from a very crosshatchy world of inking.
Oh no.
School of inking. So
Yeah.
I did a lot of uh, like Scott Williams and Jim Lee and Greg Capullo kind of style.
Yeah.
Danny Miki, were kind of the inkers and style that I was emulating for a long time. Um, but I honestly never thought I would really get into color.
Yeah.
Color scared me around that time. I was like, oh, the people who do color, man, they're a different animal. I'm never gonna never gonna
Yeah.
be able to get on that. But lo and behold, that's what I do. But what I found is that inking, my 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 years spent inking wasn't for nothing, right?
Right.
Like being able to the common thing is like spot blacks or to be confident in your lines and your um, be confident in what's on the paper to guide you.
Right.
Getting that confidence was something that
No,
I
that
think
takes a
really,
lot.
really, really helps with watercolor because you have to have confidence in what you are starting with and what you're going. Like every
Yeah.
brushstroke counts, right?
No, it's true. So I'm gonna start inking mine, and I just was kind of figured I would show you guys some of my tools of choice. I'm a big fan of brush pens. I feel like they're the most natural. Uh, they feel like you're using a paintbrush. I either use a paintbrush or a brush pen whenever I'm inking.
Mhm.
Um, the only thing that I like about these over dip brushes is I don't have to dip and I don't
Right.
run the risk of my lazy arm accidentally knocking over an entire jar of ink. I literally can just go until it runs out. And when it runs out, sometimes you get these really cool effects where the brush is drying out and you can get textures that you normally wouldn't be able to.
Hmm.
Um, like hair. I actually keep one or two of my these in particular. I keep these on hand when they're drying out. This is the Pentel Pocket Brush. I wait until it's almost dead and then I just put it to the side. And I have three or four of these. They're just sitting in the wings so that I can use them in their drying out stage as like to make hairs and things of that nature. Um, this one right here is a Kuretake. I don't remember which one this is. I have a few Kuritakes. This one is a platinum, and these two are both synthetic or natural fiber brushes.
Hmm.
Um, these are sable hair brush tips. It's really really fine, and there's a lot of play in the tip. It's not like this one, which is synthetic, and these run about $15. Um,
Yeah.
these can run anywhere in up to 100 something, depending
Hmm.
on what it is. Um, and then you've got the cheapo version, also a Kuretake. So these and these are made by the exact same people This one's like $70, and
Yeah.
this one right here is somewhere around $3. So these are
Yeah.
disposable
Right.
brush tips. And then you've got
I have
the
some of those brush tips
Pentel.
here.
Yeah. Then you've got the Pentel. Yeah, those are the interchangeable brushes over on
Hmm.
Tony's side.
Hmm.
Those are the tips that you can swap out whenever they run out of ink.
Right.
Um, and that's the number 40, I believe, the one you have.
Yes.
The thing I like most about that one that you have, Tony, is the feel of it has like a matte finish to it,
and it's
and it
metal.
feels oh yeah, it's made
Yeah.
out of like a really heavy metal, so it has a
Yeah.
lot of weight to it,
It
but it
feels
also
good.
doesn't slip out of your hands very
Yeah.
easily. This one is the weapon of choice for Kim Jong-gi. This is the one he uses all the time,
Hmm.
and it's the Pentel art brush.
He
He
probably
buys them in
by
bulk.
the hundreds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The entire back end is actually, you can unscrew it, and it's the entire ink cartridge, and it's squishy. So you can actually squeeze it, and it infuses ink into this synthetic brush tip.
Mm.
And it keeps the tip pretty long. I rarely have to swap out these tips. Uh, they're pretty durable. They're also pretty stiff, which is why I think he uses them so prevalently.
Right.
They don't have as much give as some of the others do. So
If,
that's
if you are getting into inking, you'll probably want to start with a stiffer brush,
yeah,
because you haven't gained the sort of the skills of like pressure control yet. And so
which
when I
which is
first bought my first like sable brush, of any sort, like really soft hair brush, I really had to be cognizant of my pressure, and it took a while to learn how to deal with it.
that's true. The more the stiffer your brush, the in some ways better. Um,
Hmm.
Especially when you're doing when you're first starting out, it's crazy how the play in the brush. Oh, this is actually one of the dry ones I accidentally snagged. Um, the play in the brush tip will totally change your line, like the weight of it, the um, like everything about it. Your brush
Hmm.
might go the wrong direction just
Right.
because
Right.
it's so stiff, or it's so, you know, has too much play. I love the sable hairs for that because they tend to go to a finer tip, but they also fail in that they have like no girth behind them. So they separate, and kind of, when they separate too much, it's like you lose all the ink. It
Right.
just stops flowing, and you have to wait for it to kind of recover. And those, they tend to flow better, but they also tend to have, the added consequence of you can't go too wide with your stroke, or it'll, it's gone.
Hmm.
What's your favorite one to use? Is it that Kuretake?
So there's two different things. Like when I did the last comic I did, which was for Zenescope, I did two separate approaches. Um, the first one was with this brush, which was this brush pen, because like you said, even if you're not doing a super long line where you don't have to redip your, so you don't have to redip your brush,
Yeah,
um, that you just work so much faster by not having to redip your brush. You're just
that's
like
true.
do. And I was able to go through and ink like 2.5 pages a day. Just this probably added like a half to 3/4 of a page of amount of like ink work I could do just by using these pens.
Yeah,
And then my finishing, I'd pull out this. This is a manga quill, that I found online. It's a little bit more flexible than some of the Hunt stuff. So you
yeah,
have to be aware of it, but it's also a larger nib, so the reservoir on the nib actually holds a little bit more. And so again, you can kind of go a little bit faster, and you don't have to
yeah.
constantly keep dipping and being aware of that drop of ink that's at the that's on your crow quill. But
Yeah.
I would use, like I said, my natural state of inking comes from sort of that cross hatching uh, feel of things. So
Gotcha. So another thing about inking is direction. When
hmm
you're inking, it's really good to know what direction you're making your strokes from. If your tip is facing this way and you're using a brush tip in particular, this is not a big deal if you're using nibs like microns or things of that nature.
hmm
Anything like that, you don't really have to worry as much about. But with brush tips, it's a big deal, and crow quills.
hmm
If you go at the paper like this, you run the risk of the tip digging into the paper and splitting with a crow quill,
right.
causing a massive hemorrhage and you get ink everywhere. Um, if you are using a brush and you do that, you'll get splitting in your brush fibers, and
hmm
same thing happens. It's not as messy, but it's still bad. Um, so you want to make sure that your strokes are going in the direction of the tip of the brush. You can rotate your paper at all times whenever you're working, so that you don't have any of those wonderfully horrible accidents.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I also if I hold my brush different ways at different times. So right now I'm
Mhm.
doing these hairs up here. So I'm going to use the very tip of the brush, not the entire side of the brush, which I will use at certain times, um, because I just want the fine tip to brush the surface of the paper. If you do it so that you get the entire body of the brush, your stroke is thicker. You don't have as much. Um, it just doesn't look the same.
Mhm.
So
So like I'm going to use this carbon ink just to talk about, like, you know,
differences in inks.
differences in like brush and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
The other thing to note really quick before Tony gets into that is that different inks have different properties. Some are
yes.
waterproof, some are not.
Yes.
So if you're going to be adding water media at any time, make sure the ink you're using is actually waterproof. a lot of them that a lot of them that come with the really nicer pens and brush tips are actually not waterproof inks. They will support waterproof inks, but they don't come with them because they tend to damage the fibers naturally. So you want to make sure that you get ink that is appropriate for that particular pen, and also that it's waterproof if you ever intend to use water media.
uh, hold on. I wanted to zoom in just a little bit here. I'm going to zoom in on mine just a little bit. So some exercises to kind of do, like, so Dan kind of mentioned like like the direction of your brush and everything else like that. But there's a difference between holding it more upright, where you can get, you know, more consistent and thinner lines on your brush, right? Versus really letting the edge or the side of your brush kind of come through. And so, getting used to that pressure, right? And this is, using a standard brush, and we see it's just drying out here, which could be an effect that you might want. Um, but using the side of the brush and holding it lower versus holding it up, and having this angle in your wrist is going to be important to be aware of as well. It's going to make it easier. If I'm trying to do a thin line, but I'm holding it at an angle, that means my entire hand has to go in the direction of your line. Like if I'm holding it very at a low angle, and I want to do a thin straight line, um, that's much more of a difficult process that you're putting on yourself. Um, you're making it more difficult for yourself to get the final result that you want.
Yeah.
The other thing to be aware of if you do watercolor and inking with brushes, like I've done in the past, but people have asked me like why I have different color tape on my brushes because I have one color tape for brushes that I use for inking, and I have another color tape um, for. Let me find right here. So I have a blue masking tape and a little bit of white masking tape. So I know that this one's for watercolor and this one's for inks because last thing you want is to get like little ink particles in your watercolor.
So you're doing it specifically for the watercolor. In other words, to
Yes,
save the watercolor,
to save the watercolor, not the ink. The ink's fine. The ink will be good.
ink's impervious.
Yeah, you do a lot of stuff with ink. Okay, I think I'm just gonna change my eyebrow, and then I think I'm good.
So another thing is there are many different types of ink. We talked a little bit about waterproof versus non-waterproof ink. There's also this stuff that I love and hate at the same time called black walnut ink.
Oh,
It's actually made with black walnuts, and it is yeah, it's special. It has a lot of you can actually make this yourself, which is interesting. It is a whole process, involves a really stinky
oh,
process.
I
Um,
am afraid to, like I was gifted this bottle of walnut ink like by
yeah,
an this is like an artisanal walnut
yeah. Same
ink.
with this. Same
Yeah,
with this. This
and
one's made by another artist,
yeah.
Howard Lyons. Makes this.
Oh
He
yeah.
actually makes his own periodically, and then he puts up the batch for sale.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And this
And
is
whew,
yeah, this is number eight. 8 batch,
we-
and it's brutal. You open it up and it will reek up your whole house. Like literally, I had to air out
yes.
the entire house when I opened it last time. Windows and everything. The dog started barking. I was like, okay, that's
Yeah,
not good.
yeah. No, no,
Um,
for sure.
on top of that, though, it has like a weird kind of. It's not uncommon for it to have like a scum of some sort on top of the surface,
It's
which you can
organic,
kind of
right? I mean,
yeah, it is organic matter. Yeah,
yeah.
and it will
It's not like
I mean it
charcoal or
creates a
stone.
texture, yeah,
Yeah.
but it also creates some of the coolest textures and effects that you just don't get. It's a very kind of brownish ink. It doesn't really have the same consistency as like a true black. um, but if you ever want to like kind of play around with like, I want a warm and cool gray, but I don't want to use anything other
Hmm.
than ink, use this for your warms. Just make sure that you have a window open or something, and do it in a non-public environment.
What would you rate the waterproof rating of that walnut ink?
That's a really good question because I've always mixed it with watercolor. Like I've let it
Yeah.
dry and then I've gone over top of it,
Uh-huh.
and it seems to pretty much take. It doesn't. I mean, it's still pretty like waterproof for the most part.
Hmm.
But then I've gone over it. It's anytime I'm using it on dark areas, so it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't know. How about you?
I, I think it's like 80-90% or like 90% water like resistant. There have been a few times where like
Oh, you
it
mean resistant as
yeah,
opposed to
like if I
yeah.
watercolor over it.
Yes, yes, I will say that it does have a weird resist quality. If
Yeah.
you don't get that scum off the top, the
Right.
scum is
Right.
like an oil. So
Yes, exactly. There's like this.
it will, if there's too much of it on the surface, it will actually like yeah, that's exactly right. I made it a point to, as soon as I open the thing up, I get a little measuring spoon, a teaspoon, and I take the stuff off the surface before I even start, so that I don't have that issue as much.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's an interesting ink to play around with. Another one that I like to use is the Green Grenade. This is kind of the one I swear by for comics work.
Green grenade.
It's
Oh, oh, you're
it
talking about
yeah,
the
Black
The
Sumi
Japanese
ink.
Sumi ink.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And this stuff is, I mean, it's kind of amazing. It is a pure black. Um, Dr. PH Martin's. That's another one that's really good. I'm trying to think of what's another
Holbein
one that I
has a
use.
nice one too.
Yep.
Holbein.
Sennelier has a really tall kind of tube that you can get that's also a really good black. I ran out of mine, but I would show you that because it's a pretty common one that I like to use. I'm trying to think of some others that are top notch. Sumi is probably my favorite. If I'm going to be doing comics work, it's waterproof. It dilutes. This is the other thing you got to worry about with inks. Some of them will dilute easily. Others will have a really hard time getting to a lighter version of it. This one has a hard time. You have to put a ton of water for like a drop of ink because it's such a pure black. It's
Mhm.
really takes a while to kind of dilute it. I usually have like one of those clover leaf trays that I just kind of go around in a circle until I get to a point that I can actually dilute it. And
Right.
I just keep adding water each time. Um, so I'm going to actually do some dilution right now just to show you guys. It's a good transition. Patting myself on
So
the back.
you're gonna do a little ink wash over there.
Yes. An ink wash is very different than watercolor washes. So for those that are have been watching all of our episodes and, like everyone, and are really into watercolor, this is the opposite of that.
Hmm.
It does not have the same like ease and watercolors tends to be very silky and smooth, and ink is kind of finicky. It dries fast is the
Yes.
catch.
And also you have
Uh,
less play. Like there's a chance for
yeah,
watercolor to like you can pick it up if you're fast enough.
yeah,
You can also re-wet it to a certain degree and do some lifting.
yeah,
There's some techniques after the watercolor has dried where you layer it and you can do some fun stuff. With inks, it is much less forgiving
yeah.
because it stains, right? It stains and like, oh, that's it.
Yep. As soon as it's on there, it's pretty much on there. You can push it around a little bit, but you got to do it really quick before it stains too much.
Mm.
Um, do you use the same brushes that you use for watercolor that you use for ink?
For the most part, they're pretty. I
They're
mean,
pretty synonymous.
they're pretty synonymous. Like if you, I just keep them separate. The ones I use for ink versus ones I use for watercolor. Um,
Well, that's what I was getting at. Do you ever just clean them and then use the same ones?
I used to, but I realize that I am not as fastidious when it comes to cleaning brushes as I should be,
Yeah, I'm not either.
and so I'm just like I'll just keep them separate. It's just much easier for me to keep them
Uh,
separate and like loosely clean them than um that I don't get those
so you
like
have a church
streak
mistake thing
surprises.
going on.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So my for the most part, so here I'll
I'm
so
diluting.
this is my fun
I'm adding it.
brush holder um next to my art table. I just put a little piece of cardboard here. This is actually a silverware for your
Um,
silverware divider for you're supposed to have like forks and knives and spoons and whatever. And I found
Yeah,
that
for those that
hey,
don't
that's
know,
perfect.
Tony is amazing at like taking household objects and turning them into art tools. Um,
And then I just put a little piece of cardboard that splits it.
yeah,
So I have these are all my inking brushes off to this side, and these are all my watercolor brushes.
nice.
Yes.
I would be totally remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Mike Ruth. If you are not following Mike Ruth
Oh yeah.
this month, you should. He is one of those guys. He's a friend of ours, and he's one of those guys that likes to do um, this really cool thing where he takes like random found stuff in his yard
Hmm.
and uses it to ink with, just to show that you can literally use anything.
Yeah.
Like, I
A
mean, I've
fish
seen him
bone.
take like a twig or a fish bone or, It's like, well, last night we had turkey, so this wishbone is now going to turn into my brush. And it's like, what? It's
Yeah,
it's it's kind of
he's
beautiful and also a little bit on the crazy side.
yeah. If
Um,
you look up uncouth Ruth,
yes.
you'll find him.
Yeah. Doyle says, smooth out that chin, Tony, and you'll have a Tom Cruise vampire.
No, I'm like Bela Lugosi. He has like a dimple in the middle of his chin.
He does. He has a divot. Yeah.
Yeah, he has a big ass divot. So we're just gonna. One
I
of the
love how
things
we're
for
both going old school with the Lugosi version.
yeah.
So this is an ink wash, and I'm working really light before I start to go dark with this because, as Tony was mentioning earlier, once you go dark with this, you cannot go back.
Yeah.
Ink is very unforgiving. I would make a
What
really crass joke, but I'd probably get smacked for it.
so
Um,
one of the things with when you're doing cross hatching and line work and stuff like that is to be aware of the contour of what you're inking.
yeah,
So if you have, and the best way to describe it is to think about like for me, I constantly think of like a tube or a cylinder, right?
hmm.
And the direction, like if I have a an arm, right, that's kind of coming out at you, right? I see people like in the beginning they crosshatch and they don't take into account the curve of what they're crosshatching. So
Yeah,
you want to crosshatch along you know along the um, contour of the object, right? To kind of indicate that not so you're using your lines not just to indicate value, which is what we kind of start off with like in the beginning, but you're
right.
also using your lines to indicate form. So a single line then has sort of two properties that you can start to tackle with your object that you're doing line work on. I see too many people sometimes when they're first starting off. Let's say there's a cylinder, it's the same thing. Like, hey, I want to do the cylinder, and they just do it horizontal, right,
Yeah,
across that, and then they do it vertical, and then it's like, okay, you got the value, but those lines don't help indicate. Our eyes follow these lines as shortcuts to
yeah.
show us what is where the contours are, and you're not following that. So always make sure you take into account like the contour. So if you're doing this bicep here, you're contouring across that bicep.
Another note: if you're using a brush specifically, use the back of your brush to hold all your water. Your back of your brush almost never gets ink, like all the way at the top up here. Um, the very tip of your brush is typically what holds all the ink. So if you want to blend, use the side of your brush and kind of roll it to the side to blend from light to dark. I'll kind of show you an example here. You can put more water in your brush at any time. Just note that it's really hard to go the other way. Um, you can go darker, you can't go lighter. Who was your favorite vampire?
Favorite vampire?
Mm.
The Count from Sesame
I
Street.
love it. All right, that's pretty. You win. Uh, that one's. I can't top that. Yeah. I really thought it would be a sparkle vampire, but I guess not. Uh,
Why would you think
mine,
that, huh?
yeah.
Man.
Edward was always the greatest. Um,
No, man, Team Jacob, man. That's where it's at.
I mine was
I'm kidding. I have no idea.
yeah, you do.
Yeah.
mine, mine, I think might have been. Oh man, I think it was honestly Interview with the Vampire. Um, like
That's the
I
Tom
felt
Cruise
like
one, right?
and Brad Pitt and
Yeah, yeah,
Antonio Banderas and
yeah.
like literally every star ever. It was kind of crazy how many people
How
in that.
star-studded that is.
I know, and like uh, who was the other one? Nah, I mean I did like Bram Stoker's. That one was pretty good. Uh, I'm trying to think of who else was in that though. Who was the little girl that was in it? Kristen Dunst, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that one literally was a who's who. So I'm making my Bella Lugosi one much like more gur.
Hmm.
His anger was never my criticism of the Bela Lugosi version is that he was never terribly he was never terribly like aggressive or
No, he wasn't. He was a
like
gentleman vampire. He was
yeah, I
he,
mean he was
he was
just
he was
so
the sexy.
dainty.
He
Yeah,
was the first like sexy, elegant vampire.
yeah. But he never really got like super angry, you know. I was
No.
expecting like it's like come on, where's the vampire moment? Where you and it doesn't even have to be anger, but it's like you're about to like rip this girl's heart out. Like, come on, where's the gur?
Give me the grr.
Exactly.
I mean, it was also like he was also scary at the time.
It was not scary.
For the
Uh,
time. I think the women were.
you think? I don't think anybody was afraid of
No.
this vampire. You think people jumped out of their sheets?
I
Bella
mean,
Lugosi, oh my goodness.
people jumped out of their seat on a giant tarantula on the big
Yeah, it's a
screen.
giant tarantula, man.
uh,
Yeah, no, he was my I think he was my least favorite of all of them.
he is. I will definitely give you. He's sort of the most boring. He's the most cookie cutter. Like nothing crazy.
Yeah, very blah de blah.
Yeah.
So I'm putting a lot of water down. This is the other thing that's really cool about ink effects. You can do some really cool textures, especially this is where the paper comes into play. The paper you use is almost as important as the type of ink and how much water and everything else. The
Mhm.
paper can kind of give you your textures, and not all paper is the same, as Tony will
No.
definitely attest.
Like I've
Like
tried
some,
trying to do ink on like I actually have some rice paper and stuff like that, and doing a brush with ink on rice paper is actually you, you have to be extremely cognizant of how much water is in your brush
yeah,
and everything else. It's tough.
I like to do this thing where I keep if the one thing that is nice is if you do have a lot of water on your brush or on your paper, um, the ink won't take as fast. Like you can actually pull it off like that by rolling your brush,
Mm-hmm.
which you can't really get a few other ways. By adding water and holding your paper at like running your paper down, you can get really cool streak effects and things of that nature. That it's stuff that's really only indicative of ink. Like watercolor doesn't do this.
Yeah.
Um,
I
I
mean,
mean, you can
it
create
can,
similar. It can, but it's not the
but
same. It
yeah,
doesn't naturally occur.
right, right.
Like I find
You have to
rotating the
force it.
page gives you some really cool effects too. Like when the water starts to run down, you can blow,
Hmm.
and sometimes that will you'll let the water kind of. I'm gonna speed up this whole process here. I'm literally knocking my. Trying to get these bleeds to go all the way. He could go all the way.
We, we 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 should see if we can get like Ruth to come on during Inktober to do an
Yeah.
Inktober with us.
Oh, totally. Yep. I'm down.
Yeah.
He might be a little booked up with his own stuff, but I'm definitely down with that. He's
Yeah, I'm sure he'll spend some amount of time. We can adapt to his schedule a little bit
Mhm.
and be like, hey, during the month when you're working on something that you think is kind of fun, let's hop on.
I like to really mess around with the textures once they start. Like I don't let them behave on their own all that much, just because they often kind of go, like ink in particular will go way off the rails.
Yeah, ink you have to be a little bit more controlled with than like watercolor, where you can kind of um, let it do its own thing for a little bit. You know.
Can flick.
Yeah, I'll have a toothbrush. I'm gonna pull a toothbrush a little later to get some.
So I'm wanting some of these to bleed. I'm gonna let those bleed, and then when this dries, I'll then go in with another flick and get something that's actually more crisp, crisp lined. It's a push and a pull. Hey, how's it going, Ron?
Hey, what's up,
You
Ronnie?
really are cross hatching the
Oh,
bejesus out of that, aren't you?
I am. I am. I haven't done cross hatching in forever. So I was like, you know what? Let's have some fun.
You're being that guy.
Well, we're doing Inktober, and I want to do
Yeah.
something a little different than what you're doing, right? You're doing kind of
Yeah.
like washes with a brush as your
Yeah.
main thing, and I was like, you know what? I'll try to do something a little bit different. We're gonna
I'm
hop back
fighting.
to a brush.
Uh, I have these fruit flies that I've been like battling for the last, I don't know, feels like forever, but it's only been like a week or so, and they're driving me crazy. They love the smell of the ink once I opened it. It's
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, it's like crack to them. I'm uh, I'm fighting them off as I go here.
Well, the other part about this is that I'm also trying to like normally when you ink something, you have to be aware of whether it's going to be digitally colored and things like that too.
That's
So
true.
so if this was going to be digitally colored, I might kind of do a little less in the cross hatching business of things, um,
Yeah. The other thing is when there's
leaving more open
you
area.
you tend to work with your colorist that's going to
Right.
be coloring everything. Like a lot of times, the colorist might not like a lot of colorists tend to shy away from any tonal stuff. So things like this that
Hmm.
I've done, they would not be a fan of.
Yeah, they
There
they
are some
wouldn't.
that do know how to work with tones, but the
Hmm.
majority of them, it's not that they don't know how. It's just it's more work for them. So they tend to shy away from that. You have to be cognizant of who's going to be getting the work next, not
Yeah.
just your side of it. It's their
Yeah.
side as well.
So the assumption here is that if you're doing Artober, it's primarily going to be your work. But if you planned on digitally coloring some of the stuff, or watercoloring it afterwards, if I was watercoloring it afterwards to this,
Yeah.
like I might do some ink washes on here too. But if I was watercoloring after this, uh, I would definitely leave more sort of open space.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be, you know.
I'm kind of figuring out this. I keep putting more water in my brush, so I'm using phases of black. I'm trying not to use like pure black almost at all. Mostly because once you go,
That's yeah,
once you go there, you can't go back. I mean,
right.
you're
That's it. You
yeah,
can't get any blacker than non-watered down ink.
yeah. No, that's you can add white, and that's pretty much it. Which we will get into here in a second. Um, White inks are one of those things where it's like it's another one of those use it sparingly. Um,
And they're never as white as you think, and your paper is never perfectly white as well. So
right.
you know,
So you run the risk when you do that also. So I'm gonna try and. It's funny when you do add water. When it's wet, it will look much darker than when it dries. That's one thing to note. This
mhm.
looked way darker before, and now it dried, and it's like way lighter. There we go.
Oh, where did I put my inking brush?
So, who are some of your favorite black and white guys?
In terms of like, I've always really liked Barry Windsor Smith's like lines in black and white art.
His black and white, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, you really can't go wrong with his black and white stuff.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, there's
have you do you have Opus? His one of his books, one of the two volumes.
yes, I do.
His art books. It's kind of funny because like he has a lot of watercolor stuff in those,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting to see the difference between his watercolor work and his black and white work that he did primarily for comics.
Mhm.
Um,
No, yeah, it is a lot of these like I think um, classic artists were or classic, the more traditional comic book artists had a lot of other skills that they didn't put on the comic book page. That could do a lot
that's
more.
true. Doyle says that he should have used a toothbrush last night. He was doing splatter with a paint pen on a canvas and let go of it, and the end popped off. Yeah, that's kind of that's a nightmare.
Oh no!
My worst thing that happened to me recently that just like broke my heart. I was painting with this particular brush, and the entire tip of it broke off while I was painting with it, and
Oh
then
no! Rolled.
rolled all the way down the page, and of course I was using like some really really super staining purple.
Right.
Um, it was just like nightmare fuel. I was like, well, we're gonna start over now. That's awesome. Not at all. Like I just sat there and stared at it for like 10 minutes, thinking,
Is there a way? Is that can I?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, exactly. It's like, can I salvage this? Is there? There's got no. No, it's done. It's real done.
No, no.
Really, 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 really done. Yeah, we've all been there, man. I feel
I
for you.
yeah. The worst when I was inking a page for a comic, and this is what I used to have my I used to keep my ink closer to my page,
Oh yeah,
like the bottle, and I used to put like a I used to put tape on the bottom of it, just to make sure that worked at a slight angle. Um, and my hand comes by. I turn around in my swivel chair. My hand just comes by a little bit too low,
raised it.
tips it,
Yeah,
and it just rolls and spills all over. It's just like no saving whatsoever. You're just watching it drip down onto the carpet.
yeah. It's just and you know in your heart when it's happening.
Yeah,
That's done. That's
it's
all
done.
done.
No, no,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, okay, I can handle this. I'm a professional. I'm going to do this again, and we're going to start over. And I did it again. It happened twice to the same page, and the second time, the expletives I let the expletives fly. I was
Yeah.
just like, mother of
Yeah.
mother of a
Pearl.
beanstalk.
Yeah. My
uh,
I have to be very cognizant about my swearing these days. My
uh,
son parroted something the other day that just like I didn't even know how to. I was like, what just came out of your mouth? Um, yeah, I was dumbfounded, and he used it correctly, which was the more disturbing term, but he had no idea what it meant.
of course he
But
does it.
uh, and you
Beautiful.
do your best not to say anything whenever
Hmm.
something like that happens. You want it to kind of pass.
Hmm.
Like, he said it wrong, so maybe he'll forget it. No, he said it again. Just for the effect. Uh,
You get in trouble.
no, just I would. He wanted to rise. He wanted to show that he knew how to use a word that like he thought was appropriate, but was very much not appropriate.
You have a discussion with him.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to have the discussion with his teacher.
Exactly. It's like, hey, so you use that word there. Yeah. Yeah, that word that begins with an F. Okay. You also used it, you know, in a somewhat appropriate way, but do you know what that word means? I approached it that way. I was like, you have to tell me what it means.
If you don't
I
know
was
what
like,
it
because
means,
if you don't know what it means, you shouldn't use it. And he goes, well, can you tell me what it means? I was like, never.
not until you
Not
start growing facial hair.
until you are like 23 or yeah, until you're out of the house and you can reap those consequences. I'd rather you just not know what that meant. I'm sure they'll come up anyhow.
Mhm.
I just would rather you didn't use it, in casual conversation
Right.
or. The more disturbing part was that he used it correctly. And I know that he totally probably overheard me, like, remarking at something on the news, most likely.
Mm.
I blame Texas for everything. Um,
That
but yeah,
orange little.
yeah, it was definitely an educational moment.
And many levels. So
Yeah.
when I mix like ink washes and things like that, I like to use
Uh huh.
these little. I bought a bunch of these sauce dishes
Oh
for
yeah, yeah,
like for like your kitchen and for little. They're like $1.
yeah.
If you go to the art store and you try to get these, they're like $5.
Right.
or
So
or
interestingly, yeah. Go ahead.
no, or I've also gotten some things like that I use around like the watercolor where from that are chipped from restaurants. They're gonna throw away their dishes because they're chipped or
Oh,
something like that.
that's
And
a good
you could just
tip.
get them for
Yeah.
free. Just get
Huh.
them for free. So.
That's a really good tip.
And you just ask, you're like, oh, hey, this is a really cool thing. Like, do you have like things that you're gonna throw away that are chipped or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Huh. I never thought
yeah,
about that. That's
yeah,
genius.
yeah. Sometimes I have good ideas.
There was that time once. No, I was just saying that you're definitely the master when it comes to finding second uses for anything lying around the house, turning it into an art tool. So, do you have your blade?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do. I have it handy somewhere right here.
Here's another one.
Oh,
And
I should use it. Do you have yours?
mine's MIA, man. I've looked everywhere for it.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. I'll use this one for a little bit.
I think it was actually claimed in my luggage once.
Oh, because it looks like a freaking blade.
It looks like a knife, but it's not
Like,
a knife.
right.
It's like really
This
not
is
a
it.
knife. Yeah.
So it looks like a
So this is
scalpel, except
yeah.
it's not going to cut me or anything else
Yeah,
like that.
it's not terribly sharp. It's a blade tip nib, and it's a
This.
special one that an artist makes these, by the way.
So
Um,
yeah, the what
Out
you
of the
can't see,
UK.
what's really fine, is that it's a tube, right? And it's folded over. So this blade has like a thin little reservoir channel in the middle. So this copper is just folded over and flattened, as if you squeeze the end of a straw, right? If you squeeze the end of a straw and just like glued it together or something like that, and then carved a little blade out of it, that's kind of what's happening here. It's just a brass straw. And so let's see, let's use this. So we'll just dip it in. Um, we'll just pull off this. But you can kind of, you work in two ways. You can cut into, not necessarily cut into paper, you just drag it along the paper and get some nice textured lines, or you can work sideways like a calligraphy brush,
Yeah.
right? Right, and then you have variation in your brush strokes, but it's a little bit more kind of textured, and it's kind of like this in between thing. And because it's curved, you have to kind of angle. You have to figure out what angle you really want to put it at. And it's a
It
nice fun
takes some getting
challenge.
used to.
It does, right? So
Once you got it, though, it's pretty it's pretty easy to kind of figure it out, and it has a lot of uses. I used mine religiously until security.
so
TSA
security got
decided
it.
to claim it. Yeah.
No.
Uh, Probably anchors, and they just wanted
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So we'll use this for his bow tie. The textures that you get out of it are pretty. It's almost like you're working with a dry brush, but not. It's a little rough
Yeah.
around the edges. I mean, it's not as you think like, oh, it's like a scalpel. It's going to be super smooth, but it isn't.
Feel free to ask us any questions, by the way,
Yeah,
guys.
but not the top of my desk. Monitor, wall, rug, and floor wasn't. Oh,
Oof. Yeah, it sounds like a bad mishap.
I should take a picture of my wall in front of my palette It's just like kaleidoscope of colors just from random flicking and splattering.
Yeah, mine. I have
I
a
don't know. Is yours
window.
like that? Yeah, your window.
I will constantly be like tweaking my window so that it doesn't look like a Rorschach test.
Mm,
Ink can be really unforgiving too with that. Like a lot of times it won't come off. Like
no, ink is dangerous.
yeah, it's not like water. Watercolor is way more forgiving.
Someone came up to me at Rose City, and he asked me to look at his portfolio. So I looked at it, and he was trying to do these ink wash. Yeah, he had this kind of like ink wash feel. Um, and I kind of told him like, if you're, it looked like it was slightly struggling with value
Hmm.
with the ink wash. So I kind of told him like, listen, if you're trying to get this effect, you can get pretty close to this effect if you just go get a lamp black
Yeah,
watercolor and then just paint, for instance, over
I
it.
swear by that. Like I tend to don't use ink, but instead use lamp black watercolor because I get values out of that I can't get with ink. Um,
Yeah,
ink is
it's just
just
easier.
yeah. Well, you said forgiving. I mean, that's really what it
Yeah,
comes down to. It is not forgiving.
no,
A handy eraser is also really recommended when you're inking. Um, Something soft. Because pencil, a lot of times when you're doing ink wash in particular, will not show through. But the cool thing is you can erase over your ink and it'll take up the pencil underneath. It's one of the very few things where it behaves that way.
he has this funky chain.
Yeah,
Right?
his cape chain.
Yeah, his cape chain. I'm not sure. One of the things, whenever a character has like a chain or a piece of cloth or what, hair, you can easily use that, even if you have like a static pose, pretty much like I'm kind of doing. But if you have that chain hang differently or like um, as if it's in motion, you instantly just sort of add motion
Yeah.
to your piece and make it slightly more dynamic. Which is why I think like so many superheroes back then had capes.
Well, you have motion lines that you don't have to draw,
Yeah, yeah.
essentially. Yeah.
That actually became a thing, and then didn't have to like.
Yeah. And then you had Incredibles come out and
Yeah,
spoil capes
spoil. Like,
forever.
no capes, no capes.
No capes.
Damn it.
I love when Edna Moe just rolls down the list of everyone that
Yeah.
died because they wore a cape.
Capes, capes,
Yeah.
capes.
Dead. Dead. Sucked into a.
Sucked into a plane.
Yeah.
Sucked into outer space.
Yeah.
Tony, are you going to
Shut
Baltimore
off,
Comic Con?
Rocket Man. Shut off, Bear Rocket. Me? No, I am not. Um,
I am going to Baltimore Comic Con. I have to confirm. I feel like I have to confirm every convention
yeah.
just because like the communication from the conventioneers right now is just and I get it because there's so many things they have to consider and think about, and they're getting used to getting back in things in order too. But
They've all been really kind of
yeah, like
Spotty.
I only got my, I have to like post it today, but I only just got my table position for Dallas Comic Con, which is this weekend, last week.
That's
Like
crazy. Well,
I got it just before
yeah.
I left for Portland. I was like, ah,
So Dragon Con, I was a guest, and up until a week before, I didn't have any information at all.
yeah,
Like zero. I got confirmation that I would be a guest, but nothing. And then a week before, all this information just came tumbling out. Um, and I know that, it has almost everything to do with, just them not wanting to have to recant information if things change.
yeah,
Um, like I understand that, but it definitely causes a little bit of anxiety as a exhibitor.
right. Here's like I want to announce where I'm gonna be. I want my fans to know where I'm gonna be.
Yeah. Well, also
Um,
you get stressed out whenever you're
yeah.
like, I did register for
Right,
this.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing. Like, I'm pretty
I
sure I
mean, there's
registered
definitely
for this.
moments. Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
pretty sure I paid.
I've definitely had moments where it's like, I did register for this con, right? Like I haven't gotten anything.
Yeah.
My worst was C2E2 one year. Um, I hadn't like heard anything, and it was like 2 days away, and I was like, okay, this is really not right. And I sent him a note, Mike Necken, and he goes, let me check. I don't think I remember seeing your name, and I freaked out. I was like, oh my gosh, I
I
can't
bought
believe I
tickets
did.
already. I have a
Yeah,
hotel.
like yeah, like I have everything except for the con. Um, and he came back to me and he was like, yeah, we couldn't. And I was like, all right, could you just check one more time before I totally freak out and have to cancel a bunch of flights? And he goes, oh, dude, you bought flights in there? I was like, yeah, I really thought everything was golden. And he goes, let me check. And he went back and he goes, actually, we do have you down. Yeah, you're good. You're at 2 o'clock. I was like, oh my God, you totally gave me a heart attack. Um, he was like, yeah, we're sending the emails to so and so. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's where I used to work. That's my old work address.
uh,
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I don't work there anymore. I must have registered whenever I worked there, and that's all right, makes sense now. Yeah. Heart attack time though, man.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So I'll reiterate that anytime you use ink and you put a wash on it, you do have to layer it a lot. Like it will always dry much lighter
Much
than what you
lighter.
think. Yeah.
It's
Like
kind of the same way.
when it's wet, it seems like it's the right tone, and then when it dries, it's never the right tone.
Yeah, is it what if you work with like white gouache? I feel it's the same way.
Exactly.
Like
Actually,
white
well,
gouache, it goes on,
minus
and
the
you're
tone.
like, yeah, it goes on, and you're like, oh, this is like white. This is exactly what I want. And then like 4 minutes later, it dries out, and you're like, oh, I got to add
Yeah.
another little. I got to layer that on again.
Yeah. So you'll see that the divot is quite pronounced right here. All right. Guarantee when it dries, that's going to be invisible.
Hmm.
Not there. So I'm liking where mine's at. How about you?
I gotta push that background a little bit, and then we'll be able to
Yeah.
see. Um,
I'm gonna add some some
this is a little bit
splatters.
like a Frankenstein of I'm like I'm using this scalpel, using a brush, using crow quills. Uh,
See what Tony did there?
yeah,
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein. Uh, today's
I'm a
theme.
dad. What's your excuse?
I hang out with you too much. That's my excuse.
That's actually a pretty good one. Yeah.
Samantha Hamrick. Today's theme. I want to suck your rink. Ah, ah.
It's got to work. There it is. He also had on like crazy thick lipstick, didn't he?
He did. He had super thick lipstick.
Like,
It looks weird, especially we're doing
yeah,
like a
it
black and
does.
white thing. Like it looks weird.
I mean, it's great if he's, drag or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, Dracula.
That's a totally different version.
uh, that's from yeah.
My dog is whining his little butt off every 5 seconds. I don't know if it's coming through on your end, but it's
No,
driving me
I
crazy.
I don't hear anything.
Oh, good. It's just in my ear. Awesome.
Yeah, this scalpel just gives some smooth yet like sketchy lines. It's weird. It's hard to like.
I used to love working with that thing when I had it.
Uh,
Dan, after my Moana and Raina and
right.
Raya commissions, I will choose Anubis from the gods. Oh yeah. All right. You're gonna snag the. I think you have the last. That's the last of the Egyptian ones that I haven't done yet.
Snag it now.
Yeah. My gods book is getting very close to completion. Have everybody
I should do that
jumping
for
in
my.
on.
I should do that for my portrait book.
You really should put a list together.
Yeah.
I mean, it helps to kind of push you to complete it. You know.
It does, and you get the people who actually want that piece already. So
Yep.
and they'll be interested in the book. So you have that as um, people get the book in addition to the art. They get the art now, but the book later.
Yep. Yep. Book comes when it's published. I mean, it's like on one hand, you generally kind of when you do it that way, you kind of defeat that particular person being a backer on the Kickstarter usually.
Hmm.
Sometimes they pick up another copy, but sometimes it kind of kills that backer as being on a backer on the book, which is, the thing that you're kind of stressed out about typically. Um, but on the other hand, it helps you actually complete it. Um,
We're
so
gonna
it's
pull
a it's a
out.
it's a trade off.
We're gonna pull out this fan brush.
Oh yeah.
So lots of different types of brushes will give you lots of different types of textures. Um,
How often would you say you use your fan brush?
Very seldomly.
Yeah, never.
Yeah,
I have three of them. I think I've
yeah,
used them twice
yeah.
ever.
Uh, I've used them for some trees and nature scenes, and that's about it.
Yeah. No, I'm the same way. I think
But
you
here,
know, pretty trees is the only time that they really come in handy. Bob Ross was amazing at using them. He found more uses for that brush than anyone I've ever seen.
I know, right? Um, but your fan brush will like is primarily meant. Would you say more for like oils and acrylics and stuff like that,
Yeah, it's not
right?
really designed
Yeah.
for what we do.
but because whenever I use it with watercolor and whenever I have used it with like ink, it does this sort of thing. It just like spreads out and it
Yeah.
can give you some nice like parallel texture lines and stuff like that. And it doesn't really hold because it's so thin. It doesn't hold a lot of water or in this case ink, so it dries out pretty fast.
Tony's version of cross hatching.
Yeah, so this is kind of like
This is quick
dry
cross hatching.
brushing. It is. It is. It is super quick cross hatching. It's like, woo. But if you haven't messed around with it, you know, um, this is what it would look like. And also, it doesn't fit into any bottle. You can't really sneak it into the bottle. So you have to sneak it out.
So I think I'm gonna call that one done.
Yeah, nice.
I might put some glints in there, and I'll use the white ink to show you what that looks like. I need to let this dry though, and that's the other thing. When you splatter with ink, your hands literally look like a Rorschach. I mean,
A
you're just
Rorschach.
covered in ink. Yeah, yeah, that. I can't say that's like one of those words like that I just have a hard time saying for some reason.
It is a
What's
weird
another one?
word.
Yeah,
Those
well,
those
it's
those
like
German words.
I can't say anemone without saying it the way I want to say it, which is anemone.
it,
Just because it makes me laugh. It has nothing to do with me not being able to do it. I just
it sounds like you ever watch that video of German people trying to say the word squirrel?
oh my gosh, no, but it sounds funny.
No, like if Germans like just can't pronounce, they like skirl, skirl. It's kind of amusing, but that's what it seems like when you're trying to pronounce like an anemone.
Anemone.
See?
So they make it sound like the Pokemon. Squirrel.
Yeah.
Finn's all into Pokemon right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
does he have the app to like go out and catch them?
We haven't shown him that yet.
Oh, got it.
Like there are certain things that we're like it's like, oh great, when we go down that road, that's going to be a forever road. Yeah, we haven't quite gone down that one yet. He's just now figuring out, like he's really getting into using the iPad and learning how to play around on that. And
Mhm. So, what do you like to use to splatter white? Like, what's your
for white,
for
I
when it comes to ink? Like, do you just use back and go? Do you go back into gouache, or do you use white ink, or what?
well, I now use gouache, just because I find it smoother and I'm
Because
able
there's,
to
there's
kind of
like
control it.
what
I
is it
don't
called? Like
like
pro opaque white or
There is that. There's also I use these pens. This is my go-to ink pen for white. If you want something that will literally go over
yeah.
top of black
Hmm.
and like 100% Uniball Signo broad. They also make a fine tip. The fine tip
The fine
is
tip
not as
clogs.
opaque.
Yeah, the fine tip clogs a little bit
Yeah,
too.
it clogs all the time, but it's not as
Yeah,
opaque. But this
yeah,
one in particular is
yeah.
like
I have
it's
it too.
perfect. Um, you can get them in Michaels, but typically they're not in the section you would think. It's not with the art.
Yeah.
It's typically with the crafts and what is it? Scrapbooking. You'll
Hmm.
find them there all the time. But yeah, they're kind of amazing. Uh, they will literally put a white line over top of a black background. Like I actually use them when I am doing my labels. I buy the little chalkboard stickers that I can put on things, and I
Hmm.
do all my pricing with a white pen on a
Hmm.
chalkboard sticker. So
But what if you want to do like splatter? Is that with your
uh,
gouache?
I'll typically use white gouache. I don't use the white inks that are out there just
Hmm.
because they tend to have less opaque.
Yes.
Like I just don't find them to be very opaque. Um,
How about a whiteout pen?
Again, this is my version. Yep.
No, but you get more. You can get like splatter with a whiteout pen versus
I'm
what
sure you
you
can.
can't get with.
I don't tend to have the same luck with those.
Mm,
I tend to have better luck, like making. I use gouache for all my splatters.
okay.
I'll put a little bit of water in it to make it more viscous, and then I'll splatter everything using gouache, and then let that dry, and then go back, and anything that I want to really pop, I'll put this over top of.
Right.
But I'll use the splatters that are already there from the gouache. Um, Now we're talking ink, and this is the ink episode.
Right.
So I
Right. Right.
mean, you can probably talk with more authority because I just don't use white ink very much.
Mhm.
I love how totally different our vampires are, but it's the exact same vampire. You popped his collar, and he never popped his collar.
No, it is. What are you talking about?
No.
I'm looking at a picture of him right now with a popped collar.
Okay. Well, I have five. I have five of them on my desktop without it popped. That's why I'm curious. Yeah.
No, like I'm looking at a thumbnail page and
Yeah. Literally, like every shot I have, it's not up. I got one with the eyes whenever he was, doing the bedroom eyes thing.
mhm.
That one has it popped, but most of them that I have, it's always down. Huh? Cray cray.
I just looked up Dracula and went to
Yeah.
images. I don't know if you looked up anything else.
Well, I was going right with this particular version. Um, so Shatner's toupee says, "Yes, I finally made it to a live Paint Bros. Great Drax, you two. Fun, fun, fun."
Thank you.
Uh,
I didn't know Shatner's toupee had a mind of its own.
oh yes, of course it does. So one of the things that I like to do is take this white ink, and anytime I'm doing splatters, like blood splatters, I'll put it right over top of the top part of the ink, and it almost looks like it gives a three dimensionality to the blood.
Oh yeah, as if it highlights its
Yeah, like it's like the
specular
light is
highlight.
hitting it.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's another little tip. So it gives like almost like a. Here, I'll zoom in so you can see like a particle effect.
Yep.
Ah, there we go. I'm so sorry, my poor little camera arm. I just bent you the way you're not supposed to be bent. So yeah, I think mine's where I want it to be. I kind of
Yeah.
want to put a little bit more darkness in here because the wash, now that it's dry, doesn't look right. Story of my life. I'll show you a little bit about how these guys work. These are amazing. Samantha says, legit curious.
Legit curious. Oh my god, did we lose audio? We lost your audio for a second there, Dan.
Yeah, that was my. I had 300 people calling me.
Oh, okay. Legit curious
Yeah.
what Dracula would look like now, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Like
Grunge.
this Dracula? Uh,
No, if you're trying to create the same, I think like
Gus?
the same tone of Dracula. Like back then, it was like
Yeah,
tuxedo and like a dapper,
right.
sexy.
Yeah. I don't
Like
know.
what would he be wearing now? Obviously, would he be wearing a cape? No. Suit?
Uh, that's a good question. I think he would look like Lil Nas from the Met
From the Met?
Gala.
Yeah, yeah, all gold.
Yeah, man. Totally tricked out. Yep. That dude's a vampire.
Speaking of which, I am going to be doing. This is gonna be the first time where I am going to be doing a show that's actually on Halloween.
Oh, you're doing that one, really?
I am. I'm doing. It's either going to suck or it's going to be good. One of the
That's
two.
the Denver one, right?
That's the Denver one.
Yeah. I would never be able to look my son in the face if I left on Halloween. That's never gonna happen.
Well, yeah, yeah. There you go. But I
Yeah,
can.
yeah. So it's one of those like that's the thing though. It's like either gonna have an amazing like
Oh
draw
yeah,
and
it's
everyone will
rolling the
be there,
dice. It's
or
rolling the
it will
dice.
literally be like you just rolled a
Empty.
hard
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Why they did it on that weekend is totally beyond me. Um, like I'm all for that con too. That con was
No,
really
no,
fun.
yeah. And so,
I really hated paying taxes at that con. Like
oh, that's right. That was
it had
annoying.
like 15 different places you had to pay.
Yeah.
It was unreal.
They tried to tax me like $5,000. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I did
They
not
do
make
it to
that much.
everyone. They
Yeah.
did it to everyone.
I was
Everyone.
like,
Everyone.
no.
Yeah, it's a blanket thing, and like, but yeah, and they're militant. It's crazy.
uh,
Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna call this one finito. Let's see.
I gotta do some splatters, and so I'm gonna give this a second to dry. But then I'm gonna talk about all the different types of white ink. You know, obviously Dan already talked about this pen, which is great. This is normally what I do. White gouache is typically when I deal with when I'm on the road and stuff like that. But I'll play around with these two. This is a Rapidograph white universal ink. Got to shake it up a little more. But it's white, but it's not as opaque as you would want. And then we'll go with the standard favorite whiteout big whiteout pen. And we'll do a little splatter off of a. I think I have my off of like a card splatter kind of a thing where you can do it.
Yeah. You know, one of the things we didn't talk about was now that I'm thinking about it, microns.
Oh,
It's fun.
pens. Mhm.
Yeah, actual pins. The thing that literally we use all the time, but totally like flaked out on.
And there are
Uh,
also colored inks that we can mess around with. Maybe there'll be a part two where we deal with colored inks, but
yeah, I feel
these
like
nice
we're
little
going to be talking about ink over the next little while.
yeah next
I think
month or so.
next maybe next episode before the end of the month we'll do another. We'll do ink one, 201.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get into more texturing than I think we have time to now. But how are we doing on time?
We are. We have been. We have been going for. Oh, we've been going for about 90 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I thought we were pretty
Yeah.
much there.
Yeah, we
So
are there.
yeah.
Are you gonna dress up for the
So
Halloween con? Yeah, that is one of my dilemmas. Like, I,
yeah, you better.
but I have to. Not gonna go as like Optimus Prime and try to paint while I'm like.
Tony, I know what you need to go as. Have you seen the Troll World Tour?
No, I'm not gonna go as a troll.
No, you don't have to. You can, well, sort of. You should totally go as Tiny Diamond.
I don't even know who that is. I'm afraid to look it
Yeah.
up.
Yep. You look it up on
Tiny
YouTube.
Diamond. No, the answer is no.
Hey, cat, cat. So, everyone, thank you for joining us on this wonderful episode of Paint Bros.
Yes, thank you so much.
If you
As
have
I
any questions at all about inking and whatnot, I should also. Oh yeah, you do that.
Yeah,
Show how this madness works.
so this is straight from the tube, so to speak. Um, but this is the rapidograph. It has a nice little nozzle and things like that. And we can grab a clean brush.
Oh, you're gonna then brush it out.
Yeah, then we can brush it out and get like some gradients off of it. So like I wanted to use it a little bit for this necklace, this chain, really get back into the white.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there, a little bit there, and then hopefully this is something that you'll see a lot too. Is have this thick little card here. And let's see if I can. I'm just going to squeeze out a little bit of this.
I've never seen this technique. This is
No,
interesting. No.
it's a very portable technique. And then we can just click. Right.
Hmm. Very controlled.
Yeah, this is a little bit smaller, and then you can just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna use a little bit
Yeah.
more out of the pen, and this whiteout for Bic is actually decently opaque.
Yeah.
You
Not
know,
all opaques
are the
as
same.
good as. Yeah.
But yeah, so we can kind of get a little bit here and there. Splatter, and then obviously go back in with the white pen. As you know, you use a variety of tools. Don't just use one.
Yeah.
I like doing it so that when you're doing this, people can't quite guess because you use so many techniques. People can't quite guess which one you used. You know, like wait, you just use pen for that, or did you use like nah, I used everything. All right,
He's an
and
animal.
then yeah, and on that note, we can,
Yeah. Um. Thank you guys.
yeah, thank
Oh
you all.
yeah. Doyle says definitely put candy on your table. I agree.
Oh
Um.
yeah, damn it.
Yeah, that's key. Key. Yeah. Thank you all for joining us. We will definitely be on again before the end of this month, and we'll
Mhm.
probably do a follow up episode on inking. Um,
Yes.
uh, we also, I think, we're both participating in two challenges, and one of them that I'm doing is going to be ink as well as uh, an Arttober challenge, which I did post up for everybody if you want to do it.
Yeah, follow
Um,
us on our Instagram and
yeah,
all the social medias. I'll be reposting it on mine a little bit later this afternoon. Dan's already
yeah,
has it posted on his, so we're just going to kind of stagger that a little bit.
and then
But follow us along.
yeah,
Follow.
the ink one. I don't think I'm gonna post the ink one. I think I'm just gonna do it.
Do
But
it.
I'm
Hmm.
planning on doing movie characters. So it'll
Hmm.
be all movie characters, which I did years ago, and
Hmm.
I kind of want to follow it up with another version. But I'm not gonna duplicate any of the ones I did before,
Yeah.
like Inigo Montoya or any of those guys.
Yeah. I might try to use that as an opportunity to just do like really quick sketches and like speed up and like do as exercises to speed up my process.
That's a good
'Cause
idea. That's actually what I think is best about Inktober is to actually hone your process.
yeah, like hone my sketching process kind of a thing. Like if I have time to do something, I know I can go all out and go all in on a piece and just really
Yeah,
render it to hell and really get that watercolor feel. But I want to also have a nice, refined, sketchy, quick process that hits that lower or faster area where I get to
yeah.
get more pieces
Well,
done.
thank you guys. Uh, Definitely follow us on social media, and I guess I'm looking forward to some of you at least doing participating in if you want to do Inktober, you're welcome to do that. I'm not saying don't. I don't. because I don't like anything that's trademarked. But yeah, if you
I
want to do
can't
it,
believe it.
definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
Take it easy, everybody.
Ciao, everybody.
See you next week. Later.
See ya.